Tonight we have a debate on Proposition 134, a ballot measure that calls for each of the state's legislative districts to be represented when signatures are collected for citizen initiatives. Joining us now is Danny Seiden, President and CEO of the Arizona Chamber of Commerce and Industry, which supports Proposition 134, and State Senator Ana Hernandez from Arizona District 24. She opposes the measure. Good to have you both here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Danny, we'll start with you. You're in support here. Why is this a good idea for Arizona?
First of all, thanks for having me, Ted. Great topic, great question. Looking forward to the debate today. This is a no-brainer. You know, this is an initiative that will seek to improve access to, access to the ballot process. So this is an initiative process for our rural counties. They're often overlooked. Rural voters in Arizona, when the initiatives come in, because for far too long, we have out-of-state special interest groups that come in, they spend millions of dollars in Maricopa County, they campaign in just Maricopa County, and then we're all left with the consequences of it. What this initiative seeks to do is force people to get out and talk to those rural people, force to get out and talk to the farmers, the tribes, everyone. Get out there and understand how their viewpoint is on these ideas that, again, it's high stakes, Ted. If you pass this as an initiative, it's very hard to change. So the process, if we can make it more inclusive, if we can make it more transparent, I think that's a good thing.
More inclusive and including all parts of the state. Why is that not a good idea?
Well, I would not say that that's not a good idea. The manner of how we're going about this is not a good idea. This is a bad deal for the voters. We're talking about trying to eliminate their access to direct democracy here in Arizona. If we're really talking about fairness and making the process more inclusive, as Danny has mentioned, why not work on extending signatures electronically to all the rural voters so they can sign initiative petitions electronically like we do for candidate races? I believe that that would be a way to make it more inclusive and more fair.
But with that not being in case, that's not the case right now, it's not in effect right now, is this a way to answer that? The idea of representation in counties and in areas and legislative districts that would otherwise be
Well,
ignored.
we are not. We're talking about signatures and getting something on the ballot. Rural voters, all of the voters across Arizona still have an opportunity to voice their opinion with a vote. So a petition initiative makes it on the ballot, all the voters across Arizona will still have the opportunity to vote. What I think the chamber is in favor is still removing a direct access to direct democracy from the voters.
The idea that regardless of who signs the signatures, everyone around the state will be able to vote on this. How do you respond?
Well, first off, Ted, let's talk about how it really happens. I mean, we can point to time and time again where out-of-state special interests come into Arizona, they go right to Maricopa County, that's all the population they need to get something on the ballot. Because this doesn't have anything to do with limiting access. It's meant to broaden access. It's meant to encourage more participation from our rural counties and from our counties, and everyone should want that. No one should be against that. And so, no, the chamber is in support of anything we can do to improve the overall process. Just like at the legislative level, when a law is introduced, it has to go through the stakeholder process, has to go through a committee process. People can debate. That's not how it works with our citizen initiative process. Right now, all you need to do is come to Maricopa County, spend a couple $1 million, and you just campaign right here because it's right here. So they never do. These rural members, these farmers, these hardworking Arizonans, Yuma, they never have the chance to really participate. They never get involved.
How do you respond to that?
Again, I would say, why not make it to where rural voters, farmers, all the voters in rural Arizona on tribal land can sign initiative petitions online? That's what it would be, another path to make that more equitable. At the end of the day, right, we're talking about this process is not easy. If it was so easy for an outside group to just come and campaign in Maricopa County, we would see a number of ballot initiatives on the ballots. And that's not the case. There is 2 this year, I believe, right?
Yeah, but we've spent millions of dollars removing ones that were fraudulently attempted to put on the ballot, including the tip credit, which would have ended the ability for bartenders and servers to get tips. We worked to keep the removal of right to work, something that's been in our Constitution since 1947. We worked hard to keep that off the ballot. So it might not look easy, but someone has to fight these things. And what we want to do is involve everyone in the process. If this is a good idea, if it's a good idea in Maricopa, it should be a good idea in Yuma, because this is going to our Constitution and it's not going to be changed.
But if it's a good idea around the state, except for one legislative district, that one district has the ability to have veto power over the entire process. Is that a good thing?
I love this argument, Ted, because it's ridiculous. You know, the way legislative districts work, and a senator next to me knows this, they're split up population in a proportion, right? So was it 203,000 roughly in a legislative district? So in order to have this veto that you just mentioned, this idea would have to be so terrible that all 203,000 and the percentage thereof would just say, we're not going to sign it. We're not going to sign anything that does this. And if an idea is that bad, where it turns off 200,000 people, it shouldn't be on the ballot. So I think it's an argument for us.
If you can't get 10% of the votes cast from a legislative district for statutes, 15% for constitutional amendments, which is what this proposition calls for. If you can't get that in Cochise or Apache or Yuma counties, is it the kind of thing that we should all be voting for?
Absolutely. We're talking about two different things. We are not saying that simply by putting something on the ballot that it's going to pass. I go and campaign for signatures to be on the ballot. That doesn't mean that the constituents that sign my ballot are going to vote for me, but they're giving the entire district, an opportunity to vote on my candidacy. Why are we not doing that statewide and allowing all the voters of Arizona to vote on something?
I think we're saying the same thing. I agree. They all should get to vote on it, and they all should have to sign for it too. Because again, let's just be honest about how this happens. Special interests will come in. They'll hire signatures. They'll rush to get something on the ballot. They'll say, this is about education. And people will just sign their name unwillingly. I'll tell you what happens in rural Arizona. When you go to a rural small business, you go to a rural grocery store, they take the time. They read it. They take a lot of care and concern when they sign their name to something. And that's a good thing. And again, we just want more participation, not less.
So are we saying that voters in Maricopa County don't read what they're signing?
I think we've proven time and time again through the court process that oftentimes they don't, that oftentimes they are not being, the signature gatherers who come into our state are not being honest with the voters in Maricopa County. They're in a heavy population center. It's a safe way. They're getting people come out of Gamage. There's no time. Oh, this is about education. Here's 4 other things I want you to sign while you're doing it. That's how this really works. We can be honest. We can talk about how it really works. We're trying to make the process better.
How do you respond to that?
I mean, if we're gonna be honest, let's make this equitable across the board. For example, you're saying that if this one district doesn't want something, that's the equivalent of what's happening at the legislature. Democrats represent almost 50% of the voters of Arizona. And who is the majority of the things of the legislation that is heard? It is not legislation that is the benefit to all of Arizona. So it sounds like the chamber wants to be preemptive in what might happen down the road.
First of all, we use the initiative process. The chamber has used the referral. We've used these processes in the past. So anyone saying we want to do something and make it harder, we'd be only hurting ourselves. This is about principle for us. And I think the principle that we can all agree on is we want more participation. It sounds like we differ on how that happens.
You mentioned this, and this is a referral to the ballot from the legislature, and maybe this is maybe wild here, but the idea that one lawmaker from one district can say, nope, don't want to see it, don't want it to happen, that would shoot down any referral that goes to the ballot. Are we talking apples and oranges here, or does that make sense?
I think you can argue it makes a lot of sense in the legislative process. And Senator, she knows she's worked with rural Republican legislators to stop really bad ideas. So again, I don't think we're disagreeing about the need of more participation, particularly from rurals. I think we just disagree about the mechanism. I argue that, you know, when you campaign to do a citizens initiative, the stakes are so high, Ted, it doesn't change. You have to work so hard. If you ever want to amend it, we're locked in forever. So we should be extra careful. We should seek extra participation. And the rural members of our state, they deserve a voice in that. They deserve to have some buy-in. And if you want to sell an idea to them, go meet with them. Go do what she does. She campaigns. She said it. She goes get signatures from around her district. That's what we want everyone to do.
Senator, more than half of states with citizen measures have these kinds of requirements. It's a time for Arizona to seriously consider this.
Again, we disagree on the form that we're going to be more inclusive and representative of rural voters. I still think that the idea would be more beneficial to expanding access to how residents sign on to ballot measures. What is the problem with making it electronic signatures for ballot initiatives? You address the inclusivity that I think Danny's referring to, making it more inclusive, making it more reachable to tribal voters, to rural voters, to the farmers. Let's talk about that path.
Separate issue. That's not what's on the ballot right now, but be happy to talk about electronic signatures and increasing ballots. We at the chamber, my members believe more access is better. We want to make it easier to vote and less to commit fraud upon voters.
Is what's on the ballot right now with Prop 134 here, is that basically a de facto elimination of citizen initiatives?
Oh gosh, no, Ted, absolutely not. As you pointed out, it's not a novel concept. The majority of states that have the citizens initiative process, they have this requirement. They have it that you have to get out to the legislative districts. You made it sound that it's county by county. It's not county by county. Keep in mind, it's legislative districts.
Right.
75% of which already touch Maricopa County. So again, I think it's a little asinine and not completely genuine argument to say you can't do this. It's very doable.
How do you respond to that?
Well, the process to get something on the ballot is already difficult. For example, one of the two propositions, citizens initiative that's on the ballot is Prop 139 for the AAA. They had to collect over 800,000 signatures just to make it on the ballot. Historically, we have seen those are one of the two this year. There was 2 in 2022 and 2 in 2020. I feel like this process is already working if we're only seeing minimal citizens initiatives on the ballot.
Real quickly, last question. Do you think this is what the framers had in mind when they set up the citizen initiative process?
I'll go one step further. I think it's what the framers had in mind when they set up the Electoral College, Ted, because as much as we agree on some things, we do disagree on this. I think that the point that the other side, the opposition side is making, which is that we're a kingdom of Maricopa and everything that happens in Maricopa should rule the state, I disagree with that. But what it's saying is when you vote for president, you should only have to go to New York, Los Angeles, Miami. That's what this is. That's exactly what this is. It forces representation for our more rural members, our farmers, our ag people.
Last word on this.
I mean, it sounds like the chamber would support abolishing the Electoral College to make it more fair across the board.
All right. Well, we finally got something here. Thank you both for joining. Good debate. Good to have you both here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ted. Thank you so much, Senator Hernandez. Appreciate it.